Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome. It's Monday, December 22nd, 2025. I'm Brittany Noble, filling in for Roland Martin. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. In Haiti, a full-blown humanitarian emergency, a generation of children without schools, without food, and surrounded by gang violence. Miami Herald Caribbean correspondent Jacqueline Charles joins us with a sobering look at what's unfolding right now. Also, a Florida school board member is under fire after being caught on video saying 80% of Black people he's met are nasty, rude, and problematic. Now the Clay County School Board is scrambling and calls for his removal are growing louder. Also today, in a stunning legal twist, a judge has overturned Karl Jordan Jr.'s conviction in the 2002 murder of hip-hop jam master Jay, calling the prosecution's move theory too weak to stand. And in our Fit Live Win segment, we're talking about the heavy load girls are carrying. A licensed professional counselor will discuss empowering Black girls through faith, therapy, and community, including her powerful Our Girls initiative. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Well, tonight, Haiti is in free fall. Gangs controlling 90% of Port-au-Prince, a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding, and an entire generation of kids caught in the crossfire with no schools, no food, no future. Congress just passed tough new sanctions targeting Haitian gangs, awaiting Donald Trump's signature. With us today, we have Dr. Omeko Congo, senior professional lecturer, School of International Service. We also have Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, author of How Exceptional Black Women Lead. We also have with us A. Scott Bolden, an attorney for News Nation and political contributor. Thank you for working with us and rolling through the punches, everyone. But what we are not going to stop doing is telling stories that matter. Can you tell us about your feelings about what's happening in Haiti right now?
An absolute human tragedy. And here's, to me, the really sad part of the situation. I believe this to be a man-made tragedy. If we look at the long history of Haiti, that has undergone many interventions from other countries, including this country, to destabilize the country. If you look at the history of the nation and the degree to which it has been forced for centuries to give money to its oppressor in terms of France as a way to continue to pay for its liberation, its own liberation. all of those things have left Haiti for now years in a very disrupted and very unstable space. And unfortunately, what we're seeing right now is just the latest version of that instability. It is a sad, sad situation for Haiti, and it's a sad way of seeing the impacts of what the world has done to Haiti once again unfold violently on the home front for that country.
Talk to us in detail. What more have you seen?
I cannot hear the host.
Oh no.
I heard the comments that were just made, but I cannot hear the host for some reason.
Oh no.
You guys, can you communicate with her to tell us a little bit more about the reporting? What's happening?
Well, if you can hear me, I think the reality is that Haiti has always been on the short end of the stick as an African-American country in the Western Hemisphere, very close to the United States. I agree with Avis, this is a man-made tragedy, but I've never understood how we won't fix Haiti, right, compared to our other Caribbean countries. And while there's a lot of despair, there's political strife, there's violence and what have you, this new joint force of several countries and the gang suppression unit seems like a great concept, but just stopping the violence, right, of the gangs isn't enough. You've got to dismantle them. As a former prosecutor, having dismantled several gangs in New York City 20 years ago, we certainly, it can be done, but you've got to, one, dismantle them or empower them to conform to a political situation where they can be active participants. I'm not talking about letting them off the hook for the violence, but this violence has always been connected to politics in Haiti. And so once you dismantle them, right, how do you put a government in place with the bylaws and constitution that work for everyone, a democracy? And then how do you enforce it in a country that historically has had trouble managing its own democracy? That's the real challenge for the UN. That's the real challenge for the US. If we can be intentional about it, I think we can ultimately solve those issues, but it takes time, money, resources, and intentionality. If you don't have those four things, Haiti, unfortunately, will continue to flounder.
Can I just step in here for a minute? The reality is that in Haiti, the population is not interested in negotiating with the gangs or bringing them into a political process. You know, the transitional presidential council that is in power was just forced to publish an electoral law that has a built-in amnesty today, that if you have not been convicted in a Haitian courtroom in a country where you have people in jail longer than the crime, the sentence on the crime, then you can go and you can run. People forgot how this current crisis, how Haiti ended up in this current crisis. It ended up because people with criminal records who had never been convicted, but they had criminal histories, they were allowed to run for office. And then there was also an election that put the country in here. So today, what you have a situation where you have, you know, as you've seen in this story, where you have women and girls as young as, 7 years old that are being raped. And it's not, when I talk about rape, I mean gang rape, multiple people raping them at once, destroying their lives. And so the population is just not interested in how do you bring the gangs into a political process, which I will tell you at this very moment, that is what these armed groups are attempting to do. They are attempting to find a way to have people come into a political process so that you can get some sort of amnesty. But how long does amnesty last? And what guarantees that you have that you will not continue with this cycle? Today, 1 in 4 individuals in Port-au-Prince lives in a gang-controlled neighborhood. 90% of this capital is under gang control. And yet these women and girls that I've written about, that is just a small fraction of the people who are being victimized by this violence. They're not even viewed by the population as victims. They're viewed as complicit. Like, why are you living in a gang-controlled community as if they had a choice?
Well, my point wasn't to bring them into the political process. It was looking at a political reality where the gangs have unified under one name. One, they're seeking political access and political participation. But my first point and my only point is they need to be dismantled. The violence has to stop, but the organization itself has to be dismantled. Now, individually, if they want to run for office, if they've never been convicted, so be it. But when you're looking for a peace process, everything is subject to negotiation. And because the violence and the gangs have been so rampant, and now they've unified and they want some type of political assembly, part of the negotiation has got to be what you do with them, how you dismantle them, and what do you negotiate with them. You're not going to negotiate with violence. You're not going to negotiate with gangs who have rained terror on those communities. But you're going to have to find some medium whereby you have political stability. You have gangs that are no longer violent. You've got to dismantle them, right? And then with intentionality, you've got to maintain democracy. And there's got to be a stick or something that is going to give everyone in Haiti incentive, right? Not only for peace, but building a strong democracy. That's really my only point.
So can I get in on some of this? I'm hoping, I had some tech issues, so sorry if I missed some points that were made earlier, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that the United States is not interested in Haiti being a democracy. The United States has been intervening in Haiti on many levels, and even as it relates to the Western world itself. I mean, Haiti's suffering for being the first Black, independent republic, in the Western in general, but in the Western Hemisphere specifically, getting its independence in 1804, France, had them owe debt to them because of all of the enslaved individuals that they lost, which they paid off in 1947. But France has still been punishing them, as well as the World Bank and other organizations. Frankly, if we move up to the present, as relates to the gangs there, has anyone been asking the question where the gangs are getting the arms from? They're getting their guns from the United States, which is also the case in Mexico, which the gun industry in the United States is destabilizing Mexico as well as destabilizing Haiti. So the United States has never had an interest in Haiti being free and being democratic. It's been intervening on the wrong side of history for decades, and the gun lobby and the gun industry right now is fueling the gangs in Haiti. They're not making guns in Haiti. So if the United States was really interested in helping Haiti have peace, let's start with making sure that more guns aren't getting onto those streets.
Now, Jackie is doing some of this reporting. Jackie, can you tell us about what you have seen or what you have found in your reporting with Miami Herald?
Yes. As I mentioned before, 1 in 4 individuals live in a gang controlled neighborhood. For this particular project, Haiti's Lost Generation, the title, it speaks to the fact that 30 to 50% of the gang membership are youth or children, some as young as 8 years old with AK-47s. Okay. What are you offering them today to not pick up that gun, to not light a match to somebody's business? Nothing is being offered to them. It speaks to the fact that there were more than 7,400 reported cases of gender-based violence, the majority of which are rapes, and we're talking about young girls and women, and that when these gangs are going into these neighborhoods and these territorial disputes, they've now using rape as a weapon of war. They will say that, well, we don't rape our own, but they rape those in the other territory. You have a situation where the gangs have burned down hospitals, so the majority of people can't even get to a doctor or a hospital within 72 hours. The main story, it's a young girl, 14 years old, coming home from school in her school uniform, and she is in her house, 6-bedroom house. Her family is, they're managing. She and her father were forced to watch her stepmother be gang raped in front of them. Then her father was gunned down in front of her. Then she was taken, sequestered for 5 days with 5 other young women in the same age group, tied to a chair, repeatedly raped every single day. Okay, there was a rumor that there was a police raid That morning, the gangs, it was like 8 gunmen. They raped them. They left one guy behind. And for whatever reason, I mean, God was working that day and he decided to free them. She had not eaten. She had not drank anything. She took off. She fell face down in the field in the middle of nowhere. A good Samaritan found her. Thank God he decided not to take advantage of her. He put her in his car. He drove her to the police protection brigade that on this particular day actually existed and worked. They were patient with her for a week. She finally managed to tell them a little bit about what happened to her. They got her into one of the few rape shelters that actually had beds, and then this particular day had a bed available because they told me that they are repeatedly having to turn people away because they just have no space. The gang took over the neighborhood where they were at. They had 190 places. They had to move to a much smaller place, and this girl was able to get some therapy. When she was telling me her story, I literally was in tears and I had to stop, and I said, how come you're not on the ground? And she says, well, they've given me therapy, they've given me counseling, and they've told me that every time I'm thinking that this is the end of the world, that it's not, that there is hope. And the reason why they were able to give her that counseling is they borrowed counselors from Doctors Without Borders. So, this young lady was lucky despite all that happened to her. She didn't end up with a sexually transmitted disease, and she didn't end up pregnant. And if I thought that story was bad, then the next woman, every woman that I met, every girl that I sat with, the stories were just awful. So, the reality is that today there's a gang suppression force that is supposedly on its way. We've got a number of African countries that have offered to deploy. They've made their numbers. They were looking for 5,000. They're going to get 7,800. There's still not the money there. But, the idea is we're just going to kill gang members. Well, most of those gang members are kids. So you've got to deal with the root causes and you have to deal with the fallout. And maybe the most tragic thing in this reporting is the lack of outrage. The outrage is outside of Haiti, but inside, there's no outrage.
One of the things that I'm really trying to understand better, is there evidence that gangs are being funded or supplied from outside of Haiti?
It's not a question about the gangs are being funded outside or inside Haiti. The reality is that today these gangs are guns for hire. 2 weeks ago, there was an internal gang fight where they turned on each other, and there were dozens of gang members there that were killed. And then they said, it's because one of our members wanted to do kidnappings, and we're not into kidnappings. As I'm speaking to you right now, there are U.S. citizens that are being held for ransom. When these gangs kidnap, and that is a way to funnel money to them, people, especially Haitian Americans in the diaspora, are having to go into their nest eggs, their 401ks, take second mortgages, borrow money they're never going to be able to pay back because they're asking for tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the gangs themselves, they are making millions of US dollars a month off the extortion rackets that they're charging for containers. This is a country where 80% of the food is imported out the United States. So imagine when a semi has to go into the port to go into to pick up that stuff, whether it's fuel or food, they have to pay. So even though the gangs have been designated as foreign terrorist organizations by this administration, the Trump administration, they're still pulling in millions of dollars. And by the way, if you pay that kidnapping ransom, there is no guarantee that you are not going to be designated as a foreign terrorist organization. So that is also having people being very wary. And even the NGOs that are there that are, trying to help, they're very reluctant now because you got to get access. How do I get into roads when the gangs control the road? They're charging tolls. And as another speaker said, in terms of the arms, yes, the arms are coming from the United States majority, and that's not just Haiti, it's in the Caribbean. More than 50% of the cases that are under investigation of illegal trafficking are guns that are coming out of the United States, and a lot of it from Florida, where I currently am. But yes, we have not done anything in terms of the gun laws or to step up. The only way that they will do investigations is if they get a tip and says, oh, we have a tip that there's a container that's going in, and they will do that. So you're leaving it, on the receiving country. But when you have a country where the institutions have collapsed, I don't know if your audience understands this, but we are more than 4 years out since the assassination of a president. We will be a decade next year since there were general elections in this country. Today, there is not one elected person in charge. That is no mayor, no city council person, no president, no parliament. None of it exists. None of these people there have been, that have been elected. So how do you address this issue when, you don't have a person that has sort of the mandate from the population? And unfortunately as well, 30 plus years post dictatorship, a lot of Haitians don't believe in democracy.
My heart goes out to Haiti right now, especially the children. Can you talk to us about the impact that this is having on the children, their education?
The only thing that Haitians still believe in is an education. And unfortunately, a poor person that lives on less than $2 a day, they're spending 90% of their income on schools that are often really crappy schools. The last entry into this series is a family. The young girl is 16 years old. She wanted to be a nurse. She's raped one day. They are trapped by the violence for 3 months. Her stomach is growing. Her mom can't get her to the hospital, can't get her anywhere. So by the time the mother's able to escape this gang control neighborhood, only to end up in another gang control neighborhood, everybody's beaten down. The girl is suicidal. She's forced to give birth to this child. She wants nothing to do with this kid. When I was interviewing her, the boy is 1 year old. He's running up and down in her room. He goes to the grandmother. He goes to the aunt, but he knows not to go anywhere near his birth mother because everybody knows that there's no connection, and she told me that every time she looks at this child, she remembers what they did to her. But her mother has decided to take this child under her wing, and she is caring for him like he is her son at the expense of her own marriage. Her husband has said to her, if I die, this will be the death of me. So all of this pressure that's there, and all I kept thinking about, oh my God, I hope nothing happens to this woman, because if something happens to her, this kid is going to be on his own. And I asked her about, in the end, why did she decide to take this child who was a product of a rape and to raise him as her son, despite the fact that her own daughter rejects him? And she says, so he doesn't become a bandit tomorrow. And she makes $114 a day, a month, from a volunteer job that JSQ has given her so they can have something. It doesn't even cover her bus fare, right? But with that little bit of money, she is also paying for him to go to preschool. He's 2 years old, but she's got him in preschool because she still believes in the value of an education and what it means. So when you look at the children, you look at this and you're looking at a lost generation. But at the same time, there is this desperation, this hunger for hope, a reason to hope, to build their lives. To contrary to what people think or believe, every Haitian's not trying to get on a boat and come to the United States. They want to live in their country. They want to be able to survive. They're not asking to be rich. They just want to have peace. But it's difficult, but even in this, 40% of the schools in this country are in Port-au-Prince in the West region, where 90% of it is under gang control. But yet you will see kids in nicely pressed uniforms, walking, stepping over mud because they're going to school on the days that they can still go to school, that the gangs haven't taken over their schools, aren't threatening them. They are going to school.
Wow, they are certainly pushing through. What happens next?
Sorry, can you repeat?
That's okay. What happens next? When does the election take place?
I think what needs to happen next is, the European Union has really been pushing for, in the discussions that the U.S. has been leading about this gang suppression force, to recognize gender-based violence. The administration, there are these certain words they don't want to deal with, but we have to start to deal with it. We have to acknowledge that gangs are using rape as a weapon of war. We have to deal with the fact that we have women that are broken, but they are willing to reclaim their lives, and we have to start to figure out how do we address it. Let me just tell you, in September, I was with Tom Fletcher, the UN humanitarian person, and at one point we went into a camp with over 5,000 2,000 people. And this is a guy who's gone to Gaza. He's gone to all of these war-torn areas. And I looked up and his eyes were just glassy. And I remember writing the story and I couldn't explain why this man was like on the verge of tears. And the reality is that when you go to Gaza, you go to these other places, you know the situation exists because it's a war. It's a real war. But when you're in Haiti and you're seeing what's unfolding in front of you and realizing that this is this man-made crisis, you know, it's heartbreaking. And on our last day, we sat down with 5 women who are all survivors of rape. And the last one, at 12 years old, she was orphaned. At 15 years old, she was a victim of multiple gunshot wounds. You could see the scars on her leg. And at 19, which is the age that she currently is, she's a rape survivor. The place that she's living in, the people can't survive. They can't afford the rent anymore. So they now have to move to a suburb, Carrefour. It's completely under gang control, completely. There's not one police officer. The state is completely absent. And she says, you know, they say that sometimes when a child is born that it's a mistake. And sometimes I wonder if I was a mistake. And today I worry that I'm either going to be killed by the gangs or I'm going to be killed by the drones that the government is using to flush out the gangs. And yet somebody looks at this woman, and while all of us in that room were on the verge of we were crying. We're not even on the verge. We were crying. We were heartbroken. Her neighbors, the people in her society, they look at her and they don't see a victim. They see it's like somebody that's complicit. So for me, what's next is we have to talk about this. Like Haitians have to put this on the table, and yeah, you have to eventually find a way to peace, but you have to confront the reality and say, how did we get here, and now how do we start to get out of here?
And for those viewers who are watching tonight, they feel overwhelmed and they want to help, but they don't know how to help. What should they know? What can they do that can make a difference? The people watching right now.
So, first of all, I would say that people definitely should inform themselves. I'm always amazed, even in terms of Haitian Americans and Haitians in the diaspora who think they know what's going on in the country and don't necessarily do. I think we need to be much more open-minded. With this particular series, Haiti's Lost Generation, which is www.miamiherald.com/Lost Generation or /Haiti. We have a Haiti channel. We list in every one of those stories some of the organizations, but they are by no means the universe, but it is still a very small universe of human rights group, women's led organizations that are trying to reach, and do what they can. So if you are compelled to want to fund and provide some assistance, whatever it is, there's a list there. Or if you find an organization that's on your own, and you check them out and you see that they are doing, work that you want to support. And at the same time, I will say to people that you need to lobby, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, you need to lobby your lawmakers, that, Haiti is less than 2 hours from the shores of the United States. The gangs, this crisis threatens the whole region. And if it starts to spill over, what do you do? And when people are desperate, they do desperate things. I've been covering Haiti for over 20 years. And every time I have to do a story about a tragedy at sea, and then I go back to the town where the people have left and I talk to survivors and I say, but why did you take this chance? Why did you risk your life? And they say, you know what? I'm already the walking dead. So what? I got on a boat, and if I drowned, I'm dead already. So I might as well die trying.
Jesus, any final words?
For us at the Miami Herald, Haiti's just it's not a foreign story. It's a local story. I think people forget that these are real people. These are real lives. And if you're Black, it's just a question of where the boat dropped off. Any one of us could be in a situation. But this is a country that was rich. It was France's richest colony, and it continues to be, rich in culture and rich in what it gives. And one day you're under dictatorship and the next day they told you have a democracy, but nobody sort of told you what that means and what the power of your vote is. But, despite all the negatives and the dark and all, there is still hope. People are still hopeful, because what do you do in the Haitian culture? It's like, if you can't hope anymore, you might as well die. And people are struggling to live, and they do live. They just want a chance to breathe. So I would just say to your listeners, educate yourself. If you've got somebody that in a situation, in the power of influence, educate them and just plead on behalf of your brothers and sisters that you've never met, that you don't know. But this is a country that opened its doors to African American years ago. And, it led this, revolution. And this revolution, had an impact for all of us.
Well, Jacqueline Charles, we want to thank you for educating us. Thank you for the reporting that you're doing. Thank you for bringing it to us and telling us more about it. This is Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, and we'll be right back after the break. Stay with us.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
This is your chance to own a piece of the creator economy. And with Start Engine, investing in Fanbase couldn't be easier. Just visit startengine.com/fanbase and click Get Equity. Opportunities like this don't stay open long, but your investment can help build a platform that pushes the future of social media forward.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Godfrey, the funniest dude on the planet. And you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Welcome back. A federal judge has ordered Mississippi to hold special elections for its Supreme Court after ruling that the state's current map for electing justices legally weakens Black voting power under the Voting Rights Act. The judge found that the map, in place since 1987, slices up the heavily Black Delta region in ways that dilute Black voters' influence, helping ensure that in a state that's nearly 40% Black, there has never been more than one Black justice on the 9-member court at any time. Only 4 Black justices have ever served, all from the same central district seat first gained by appointment. Lawmakers now have until the end of the 2026 legislative session to draw a new map, after which the judge says she will move quickly to set up special Supreme Court elections for November of 2026 if needed. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State is appealing the ruling, and higher courts are considering broader challenges to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Let's bring our panel back in on this one so that they can weigh in about the judge ordering special elections in Mississippi.
Well, I guess we could say that, it's good that they got this ruling to go in their favor. Clearly, I mean, this is Mississippi. Honestly, there's nobody on this planet who should be surprised about that. Probably the surprising thing is they did get this affirmative ruling. But what's concerning and what will most likely happen, obviously, you said, that there is an appeal in tow, and we know what the ultimate decision maker would be if this were to make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. We have a stacked Supreme Court that is already on the verge of completely gutting the Voting Rights Act in the first place. And so, though this is a victory for today, I'm concerned about the ultimate decisions that we will ultimately face in Mississippi, but also what the ultimate fate of the Voting Rights Act will be once the Supreme Court gets finished with it.
Mr. Bolden.
Yeah, the real story here isn't necessarily Mississippi. And this ruling, it's great, and they're going to do it at the federal level in Mississippi. But there's a separate Supreme Court case pending whereby the state has challenged even the need for Section 2, which is the primary vehicle under the Voting Rights Act that allows individuals and groups to sue for discrimination in drawing up these maps by the state legislatures. That's going to we're probably going to get a ruling on that in the spring or summer. And knowing how these cases take time to wind through the system, the Supreme Court is probably going to weigh in, and that conservative majority, there are at least 3 or 4 justices who don't believe that Article 2, or rather Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is even necessary, that we are this colorblind society and that we are a meritocracy, and therefore how states cut up these jurisdictions or cut up these maps are not subject to, almost presumably, rebuttable as it may be, presuming that they will never be cut up just based on race alone. And so the Supreme Court case is the one to really watch here, because it will dictate what happens in Mississippi.
And how does the lack of Black representation on Mississippi Supreme Court affect the decisions involving the voting rights?
Well, the voting right, it may be that, what happened in Mississippi was they cut up a large Black district into 2 districts, believing that that would empower African-American voters in 2 jurisdictions under the state map versus 1. What it wound up doing, and what the federal court found, was it actually diluted Black votes, whereby neither jurisdiction, quite frankly, had a shot of whether they were majority or not, had a shot of getting greater representation. And while it's presumed that Black jurisdictions will vote for Black candidates, it's a rebuttable presumption, 1. But secondly, by diluting the Black vote in both of those jurisdictions versus 1, it worked in the opposite. At least the federal court found that it worked in the opposite. There's a fair and impartial way to do this, but both parties cut up these states, these voting districts, in a way that would support Democrats if they're a blue state, or if they're a red state, to support red state candidates, if you will. So both sides do it. But you still, under the law, you've got to do it in a fair and impartial manner, and it cannot be based on race or class or sexual orientation or any of the protected classes here. And so these are really tough cases to argue, but they're even tougher to defend, let alone get a proper decision. But again, the Supreme Court is going to weigh on this. They've gutted Section 5 already, and I promise you, based on everything I've read, they're looking to gut Section 2 now.
Dr. Dibinga.
I find it so interesting. I agree with everything that's been said by the fellow panelists, but I just keep asking myself, like, even with all the redistricting and so on and so forth, with everything that Trump's doing to this economy, to this country, and what these Republicans and MAGA folks are doing, following behind him, these Republicans shouldn't have a chance in like any election. Like Mississippi, as long as I've been alive, I think Mississippi has always been the poorest state in the country. Mm-hmm. And so every single day, the folks in these states are working against their own interests. And, we saw with the special election in Tennessee, where people thought, Afton Bain came in with a few points and got a lot of, Republicans shook. And the same types of things need to be happening in Mississippi, regardless of what the Supreme Court is going to do. We know what they're going to do. But, these Republicans, these MAGA, these folks in these poor states, these Louisianas and the like, they continue to live out Lyndon B. Johnson's quotation that Dr. Joe Madison used to always remind us of. You can convince the poorest white man that he's better than the best colored man. He won't realize you're picking his pocket. Give him someone to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. And they continue to do that. And it's not surprising anymore. It's kind of just depressing.
It is depressing, especially when you look at the Mississippi Delta. This is a very poor area. What does it say about Mississippi's democracy that a map that's been in place since 1987 is just now being considered illegal?
It says what we've always known about Mississippi. And actually, I'm not surprised that they vote the way they do. I mean, they may not get economic payoffs for their votes, but they understand that there is a value to whiteness and to this lie of supremacy that they like to delude themselves with. And so, Mississippi has a very long and ugly and bloody history. So none of us should be surprised that this map was the way it was for so long. The only thing that would surprise me is if this current ruling stands. That would surprise me. But other than that, it's not surprising. This is what Mississippi has always been. This is unfortunately the culture of that state, which is to grasp hold to racism as strong and hard as possible, no matter how bereft economically and educationally. And I mean, just about any measure that you can imagine, Mississippi actually is on the bottom list. I'm not being hyperbolic here. I'm talking statistically speaking. They really are at the bottom of the list when you rank states on a variety of different measures. And so they would rather be last and still hold on to the illusion of white supremacy rather than doing what needs to be done in order to lift the entire state up, which it will not do until it lets go of that lie.
We have so much more in store for you coming up on the Black Star Network. Many stories that we're going to get to right after this break on the Black Star Network.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Welcome back. Calls for resignations for a Clay County, Florida school board member after calling 80% of his experiences with Black people negative during a Facebook Live rant.
I have had 80% more negative experience with the African American community in this country than with white people. That being said, doesn't mean I haven't had good experiences with African American people. I have met a lot of great African American people, and I still friends with them because they're good, decent people. But that's the 20% of the people I have met, the African Americans. The other 80%, they're being nasty, they're being rude, they're being problematic, you know, always trying to fight, always disrespecting. So why would I want to be around people like that? No. So I understand where Nick Fuentes is coming from. Also about what Nick Fuentes says that everybody has a little bit of racism on them. I agree. I am Cuban. And sometimes I feel I am racist against my own people because we have our own personality, our own culture that a lot of other people don't like. I learned how to be an American. So right now, I'm not even similar to my own race. So that's why sometimes I don't like to be around them.
Well, Robert Alvaro, elected in 2024 to represent a district that's about 25% Black, has since deleted the video and issued a written apology saying his comments were wrong and offensive and do not reflect his values. A fellow board member, Aaron Skipper, has urged him to consider resigning. The board says that they will formally address the controversy at its January 8th meeting, but we're going to address it a little bit right here. What are y'all thoughts?
If he's here on January 8th, some of his neighbors might make some phone calls. That's all I'm saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's up?
Well, let me say this. Whenever racists apologize, they come back and say, well, that doesn't reflect the values of really who I am. Well, I just listen to your values. I just listen to you in very pragmatic, practical terms, explain away why you hate 80% of Black people, but 20% of good people. I thought he was going to also say some of my best friends are Black, but it's in that 20%, you know. And racism, you know, he demonstrates his ignorance too, because to be a racist, you have to be in power and to control and to define and to discriminate. And Black people have never been empowered in this country to discriminate or to be racist against any other group, if you will. Now, I don't like, I'm not saying Black people are victims of racism, but we've certainly been subject to years of racism, starting with slavery and all the other periods of time where we have been oppressed and have fought and survived, and not only survived, but succeeded. So how do you explain away your racist comments? Because you say we all got a little bit of racism in them. I don't have any racism in me. I don't hate people because of the color of the skin. I may hate them for how they treat me and my community. That's not racism, quite frankly. That's not a personality. That's just, I don't like being oppressed. I don't like racial violence. I don't like being called the N-word. I don't like driving while Black or selling lemonade by Black. I got real good reasons not to like a person who's been racially offensive to me, but I don't hate white people because they're white. And I'll be honest with you, Black people in this country have always wanted to succeed and survive and be left alone and to work within the system. If there's any group of people in this country who need to be mad at white Americans for what they've done to us as a group, it's Black people. And be honest with you, we're angry, don't get me wrong, but that anger and that angst, if you will, is all rooted in just wanting to matriculate in this democracy free and have every benefit of this democracy, every benefit of the Constitution, like anyone else in this country. That's it. I think that makes Black people unique, because if anyone was going to be angry and want to fight and be violent against a group of people who have oppressed them, it would be the African American community. And that's just not where we are emotionally or personality-wise.
And Dr. Dibinga, 1 in 4 students in this school district are Black. What message did the comments send to the students and their families?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, as somebody who does a lot of work in schools across the country, it sends a message that many of our Black students receive daily. You are not wanted. As much as we may smile in your face or may give you high fives and the like. The students can feel when they're not appreciated, and so I'm sure that Black people who've come in contact with him are probably not surprised by what he said at all, and it's just really disrespectful. And our students deserve better. And when it comes to this racism thing, I mean, many Black people have demonstrated their ability, to be racist towards us. I mean, you got people like Scott Turner over at HUD, and look at Clarence Thomas and what he's doing as it relates to racist policies towards Black people from the bench. I feel like at the end of the day, it's very sad when we see a lot of these non-white folks who are pointing fingers at everybody else but the white people who are in charge, but not pointing their fingers at the ICE agents and Customs Border Patrol. He's more likely to experience violence at the hands of them than he will any Black people. You see people who are, spitting on Amazon drivers who happen to be Latino, but they have no problem with what Amazon is doing in terms of taking over their entire, data system. They're mad at the Latino folks who are working in the Home Depot parking lot, but not mad at Home Depot and their ownership for allowing ICE to use their parking lots to arrest folks. So one of the reasons Donald Trump is able to be successful is because he's successful at pitting groups against each other. And you got this Cuban brother here who's not even knowledgeable of the fact that he's mad against people he should be in the same struggle and the same fight with. But that's how racism works. That's how proximity and adjacency to white supremacy works as well. And I don't know if he's angling for a gig at Fox or some other place he thinks they'll embrace him, but he's about to find out real soon, like Vivek Ramaswamy and J.D. Vance's wife, that they don't want him either.
Yeah, but he definitely is someone. You mentioned proximity to whiteness, though. I mean, he himself said he doesn't even like other Cuban people who want to celebrate their own Cuban culture. That's right. So he's one of these people that wants to meld and just kind of transform into whiteness. And he thinks and he aspires. Honestly, I would argue he aspires to be white and be perceived as white. But you're exactly right. I mean, this administration has given a lot of people like him a wake-up call, including Cubans who were thinking that they would get a pass because of this nation's history of coddling Cubans, ironically, in comparison to what we have done historically and continue to do to Haitians. Okay? So completely different treatment by this country.
Yeah,
but
so
he thought that he would come here and have that reality play out forever. This particular administration is showing Cubans, is showing Venezuelans, is showing all of these, let's just be clear, white-skinned Hispanic people who have come here thinking that they could just easily meld into whiteness. It has shown even those folk that, wait a minute, no, you not, okay? In this country, you are not considered white. And in fact, even beyond that, we're going to round you up like we're going to round up everybody else that we don't want here in order to create this white apartheid-like system that we're trying to create in order to keep this country majority white in the sense that we define it in this nation. That is what he will soon find out, or people in his family will soon find out. And definitely in terms of what he's doing on this, in terms of this board, we know what's happened, for example, with Department of Education's Civil Rights Division. It is basically defunct. They have done absolutely nothing to address any of the things that have been brought to their attention under this administration of discriminatory actions in educational institutions. So you have toxic people like that are getting away with being discriminatory and vile towards students of color and specifically Black children all across this country. He needs to be gone yesterday.
Yeah, but Avis, let me say this. We haven't talked about ignorance, right? The highest levels of ignorance is in this video that you're an elected official, you sit on the board. Why are you even making a video like this? What point are you making? We don't need to know how you feel about Black people or Cubans or white people or the 80%. What makes him think that people care what he thinks? And not only do we not care, but everybody ain't got to know what you think and how you feel. Now, I'm glad he showed his ignorance and his racism. Don't get me wrong. But you know, the most dangerous people are the ones that feel that way and say nothing. I mean, but look, you're just ignorant to think that that's a video is okay. And when you apologize, then you say, well, that doesn't reflect my values. Yes, it does. Because you were just as comfortable sharing it because you think people care about what you think. You giving us a lesson, or you educating us on why you're not a racist while making it clear that you are a racist. It's unbelievable. And that video is so unnecessary. But he want to do it. That's part of ignorance at the highest levels.
Indeed it is.
Dr. Dubinga, do you believe that a resignation, I guess, should be the expectation now?
Oh, absolutely. It should be the expectation, but a lot of these guys, they're just so arrogant and cocky, and there's going to be people who are going to come out, and we all know this as well. He's going to be, they're going to be like, he's right. Yeah, I had this experience, and they don't tip, and all of this other type of stuff, right? And he's going to feel a little bit emboldened by those people who are going to come out, and they're saying he's telling it like it is, and all of that, because we've seen that happen. But absolutely, when you lose the confidence of the community that you serve, you're supposed to resign. You're supposed to make room for leadership that claims that they actually care about the community. Like A. Scott said, he could have just been quiet and sailed quietly into what he was doing. But now that he's put it out there, now it's a national news story, there's no confidence there. And so he absolutely should be resigning and making room for somebody who actually cares about all of his constituents.
Although I will say really quickly, maybe this is three-dimensional chess, because being openly racist in this country is very profitable. The next thing you could do is just set up a GoFundMe, and then all these racists will make him the richest guy in the neighborhood. So who knows? Maybe that's the ultimate goal.
That's what I was saying. Maybe he's angling for, Fox and Matt, all of these. You never know. It's a lucrative industry now.
Absolutely.
Well, this is a case that
I'll make my money some other way then. Y'all not gonna see. Hey, Scott went to the other side. He's on the other side. Did you hear about it? Did you read about it? Scott left.
This is not the last time.
No.
Not happening. It's not the last time we'll talk about this story here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is a case that we will continue to keep our eyes on. And we have many other stories for you tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back after the break.
Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Violent white supremacy is, quote, the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland.
The greatest terrorist threat to the homeland is the homegrown violence stream, including hate crime committed on behalf of some kind of white supremacist ideology.
They are coming after everything in Black America. MAGA and Donald Trump are specifically targeting Black America. They are going after the money. Attack Black Lives Matter. Attack critical race theory, attack woke, DEI. MAGA wants to defund Black America. This is a perfect example of their desire to completely degrade and de-emphasize Black people.
What's up? It's your girl, Tamika D. Mallory, and you are watching the Black Star Network.
Well, at Turning Point USA's annual conference, J.D. Vance boldly declared to a crowd of white Christian nationalists in the United States of America, you don't have to apologize for being white anymore. Take a listen for your.
We don't treat anybody different because of their race or their sex. So we have relegated DEI to the dustbin of history, which is exactly where it belongs. In the United States of America, you don't have to apologize for being white anymore. And if you're an Asian, you don't have to talk around your skin color when you're applying for college, because we judge people based on who they are, not on ethnicity and things they can't control. We don't persecute you for being male, for being straight, for being gay, for being anything. The only thing that we demand is that you be a great American patriot, and if you're that, you're very much on our team.
Well, rapper Nicki Minaj made a surprise appearance at a gathering of conservatives in Arizona. The rap star was interviewed at Turning Point USA's America Fest convention by Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, about her newfound support for Trump, despite having slammed him in the past.
The utmost respect and admiration for our president. He has, I don't know if he even knows this, but he's given so many people hope that there's a chance to beat the bad guys and to win and to do it with your head held high and your integrity intact. He's from Queens, New York, like me. So, but what it's shown me personally is sometimes, you know, even in the worst feeling times in your life, you think that you're never going to come back from it. But you do. And our president shows that. He's been through every single thing a person could be through publicly. Having to constantly be lied on. It's not really that funny. Until you are in that person's shoes that's being lied on, you'll never understand what it feels like. That person is a human being. They have a family who has to read those lies. And that's not, and it's just not fair.
We want to bring in our panel tonight so that they can weigh in about these speeches that we just heard. Mr. Bolden, how does rhetoric like this move from conference stage to parts of everyday life?
Well, we need to go back to the height of ignorance again. Guys, why should I care what Nicki Minaj thinks? I mean, she's wealthy, an entertainer, but she's a rap artist. She doesn't understand politics. But again, the height of ignorance, because when she talks about Donald Trump, he's been through everything. Yeah, he was charged with 40 felonies, right? He's been found liable for sexual assault. The criminal cases were dismissed because he won, but those were some pretty strong criminal cases, and he drives that narrative. But the comparative analysis she did was about, this is really great, Avis, this is great, that he's been lied on and how hurtful that is to him and his family. You know how you know when Donald Trump is lying? When he opened his mouth. Almost 90% every time he opens his mouth, he's lying. And has a history of lying, not paying vendors, bankruptcies, lying to stay in office after his first term, pardoning those who attacked the Capitol. He called them real patriots. The height of irony or hypocrisy just flows out of that piece. And you saw the interviewer and the audience, they were enthralled with it because that's their reality. Something wrong with them. That's their reality. They really believe what she said, and that's their reality. And if you show them a videotape or you show them a document that talks about his lies and his bad conduct, they won't hear it. It's a wall. Nope. This is it. What's tragic is 50% of the country, maybe up to 50% of the country, really believe that false rhetoric. And that's really the sad part and the real, the risk of our democracy that is bending right now, but not broken.
Dr. Dominga, I could hear you laughing. What are you thinking right now?
Well, I've been actually talking and posting about this since I saw the clips yesterday and, posted on this today. There's several things. I mean, as it relates to Nicki Minaj, her rhetoric is dangerous. And, she is a rapper, but she's also, an influencer in many ways. And people do find themselves listening to her and being educated by her. Shout out to Reese Colbert, posted on her page that, she's up there giving Trump all of this praise and didn't say a damn thing about what Trump has been doing to Black women in this country, just looking at the unemployment numbers alone. And so she sit there and betrayed, Black women. I also find it interesting that as somebody from Trinidad who condemned Trump for the immigration, the kids in cages and things, family separation from years ago, condemned them for that. Now she's praising them at the same time that her government is working with Trump against Venezuela, which is a lot of people aren't talking about. So is there something else going on there when you have the highest profile Trinidadian in the United States and the country of Trinidad itself, working with the Trump administration? I think there's a there that people don't fully understand. She's also not knowledgeable of what's actually happening in Nigeria with Christians and Muslims. And the last thing I will say is, as it relates to the first part of what you played, MAGA, Turning Point, they are openly Nazi, they are openly racist, and people just need to accept that. When J.D. Vance says that this movement is not throwing anybody out, he's specifically talking about the debate that's happening with Nick Fuentes, who is an avowed white supremacist and anti-Semite, who was on Piers Morgan just last week, throwing out the N-word like it was nothing. They embrace everybody now. And if people fully accept that, Turning Point as well, that's just where we are today. Ben Shapiro got up there as a Jewish person talking about y'all shouldn't be anti-Semitic, but Ben Shapiro don't care about being racist, anti-trans, and anti-everything else. And so if we accept that at the end of the day, that J.D. Vance, who Turning Point endorsed for 2028, some people are saying that he wants to leave Usha and marry Erica Kirk so she could be the first lady in 2028. All this going on. I don't know about that. But I do know that Turning Point and MAGA has made it clear that we do not want Black and brown people in this party in any way, shape, or form. And we are going to openly embrace white supremacy and anti-Semites. That's who they are. We got to call them out for what they are. And this conference showed it clearly.
I mean, J.D. Vance made it very clear. You do not have to apologize for being white anymore. Dr. Weaver, in reality, who's been asking white Americans to apologize?
Well, of course, this nation's never. Come on. This. I don't even know where to start with that one. No, this nation has never done. They haven't even this nation has not even apologized for slavery. Let's just start there. Right. Okay, not even done that. So of course that's a ridiculous, once again, racist dog whistle. But I have to get on this Nicki Minaj thing. I'm sorry, I have to be petty for a second. Okay, so we know. Let me just be real. She has a thing for child molesters. She's married to one. Yep. And now she is sitting up here taking up for another one that's in the White House. Okay.
And her brother too.
Be real. Okay. And her brother too. You're right. She has a thing. She apparently thinks that's okay. Also, I also wonder, like you, I'm thinking about what could be her motivations. I'm looking at, the fact that she does not have her citizenship locked down. As far as I know, she is not a U.S. citizen. She also has, I'm understanding, some very, very aggressive tax debt. Like, is she engaged in some sort of quid pro quo? Because here's the thing: we do know that in Trump has a history of finding Black rappers, okay, to go out there and make arguments to muddy the waters a bit in order to try to get just enough Black support to be able to do something in election time. Okay, we're not in midterms yet, but I think with everything that's going on right now, she makes a very good cover for him, given the preponderance of overtly racist things that this administration is doing, in addition to his specific vice president in terms of his racist rhetoric right there at that very conference. So, you know, what I find that racists oftentimes do is they will do very racist things, but at the same time, they will try to claim that it's not racist because they can find someone like a Clarence Thomas, or in this case, like a Nicki Minaj, to put out there and say, well, look, see, we're not racist. And she's falling into that trap where she's playing that role either for her own benefit, which very much could be the case, or because being someone who is a felon, being someone who has said that they've gone into dressing rooms where young girls were getting undressed, even before we knew all about the whole Epstein fallout that we still haven't gotten to the bottom of. She is someone who has said that all of that now is okay. And in addition to that, she is throwing Black women under the bus, specifically with her statements at that. I mean, she's specifically
and presence.
Women, why are you so mean to white women? What the hell is she talking about? What is she talking about? So I have a big problem with Nicki Minaj. And if anybody has been wondering for several years, like me, why she seems to be so venomous, like if you've looked at a lot of her, you know, Twitter rants and beefs and things that she's had with other artists over the years, she just seems to be an empty, hateful person. And this is just one other example of then why she probably feels so comfortable in that environment that is full of ugly, hateful people, just like her.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we have much more coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Are you ready for the holidays? This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking about all things anxiety and the holidays, whether it's performance anxiety, presence versus presence, making certain that everybody in your space understands the boundaries and how to respect your home. This week, we're talking about those things that will allow you to have a peaceful holiday season.
It really is not about perfection. It's really about, you know, the house feeling warm and cozy and peaceful.
You don't have to like everybody, but what you can do is be cordial in those environments.
That's all this week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Well, CBS News is catching heat tonight after pulling a fully vetted 60 Minutes investigation about Venezuelan men who were deported by the Trump administration and sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Inside the network, the decision has raised serious concerns about corporate censorship. The piece was reported by correspondent Sharon Alfonsi, who told colleagues the move wasn't an editorial decision, it was a political one. She emphasized that the story had already been fact-checked and approved by standards and practices and screened 5 times. At the last minute, the top editor stepped in and objected, saying the segment did not include a response from the Trump administration that effectively killed the story, even though producers had documented repeated unanswered questions and requests. They had been reaching out to the White House, DHS, and the State Department. Now, the veteran correspondent says that this wasn't an editorial decision, it was a political one. So the panel is with us tonight, and Mr. Bolden, they're saying that it's a political decision. What do you think?
Well, this has a long sordid history between Trump and CBS. Their merger was just approved with the ability to purchase one of their competitors. They settled the lawsuit that he brought against 60 Minutes, which was one of the most frivolous lawsuits I've ever seen. And I've been doing litigation on the white collar side and regulatory side for the last 38 years. Most of us looked at that lawsuit and saw it was frivolous, and they settled for multiple millions of dollars, which made absolutely no sense. But it's easy to connect that settlement with the approval of the FCC for that merger. And so what's really dangerous and interesting about how this White House attacks the First Amendment is they've threatened these media companies, including the Washington Post and others, with either lawsuits or they've settled lawsuits, and to bring compliance or to compel them to understand that the government's thumb is on the scale here. And so now that this merger or acquisition has been completed, now you see where 60 Minutes under new ownership, right, under new leadership, now they are editorializing or putting their thumb on the scale of editorials in regard to what they're going to print or what they're going to publish against Donald Trump or not. And here, having cleared the lawyers and cleared ethics internally 5 different times, because 60 Minutes doesn't want to get sued by anybody. But so those stories that are published every Sunday night are vigorously or rigorously detailed. Now, there's some stories out here where you really do need both sides, whereby the White House, for in this case. But those stories, all you do is say, we reached out to the White House to comment on this story, and they failed to respond to us. You've done your part, fair and impartial journalism, and that's usually enough. Here, the executive producer seems to be wanting more than that, that you can't publish something without the White House pushback, which makes absolutely no sense. In fact, think about this. You don't really need the White House commentary. The White House has enough documents and lawsuits and public statements that you could run to make it a fair and balanced story. But sending individuals to this Venezuelans to this hellhole jail in El Salvador is not defensible. But there's enough where you could make it a balanced story and say what the White House position has been. And so this borders on the nonsensical that somehow this story cannot run. So this makes sense to me, that what you're hearing internally from the writer and the producer seems to make more sense than you just kill a story because you can't get the other side's input.
Dr. Weaver, at what point does "we didn't get a response" just become a convenient excuse not to report the story?
Yeah, I mean, clearly that's a lie. It's not in terms of it being an excuse for not showing the story. Obviously, just as was just described, they could have still ran the story. It's commonplace that you make the general statement that a person was given the chance to respond and they didn't. Okay. What happened here was that this White House has been putting its thumb on the scale of a wide variety of media outlets. 6 minutes now just another one. And specifically, if you look at the scale of what's going on with CBS in terms of its ownership now, it's been really sort of since the very beginning of this new takeover, where they basically gutted out a number of their Black talents and employees at CBS. If you look at what they did in terms of that god-awful town hall with Eric Kirk, this is they are actually sort of angling themselves to be the next Fox, if you ask me. And so they got the directive from someone high up, and who knows how high went if it wasn't someone next to, in, or adjacent to the White House to say, we don't want you to run it. And they were just like, we're not going to do it then. And, the journalism is under threat in this nation, this administration. True journalism is under threat in this nation. We are moving over quickly, if not well on the way to being an almost exclusively propaganda state. And this is just one example of that in action.
Dr. Dibinga, let's look at the larger picture here. What is this going to mean for reports in the future?
Well, Hitler is known to have said, or people have reported him as saying, whoever controls the media controls the race. And what we're seeing with CBS is, Barry Weiss, who has no skills or experience in the position that she was given by Ellison, who was a Trump supporter, to run CBS, and who was angling for their next deal to get Warner Brothers and the like. This is part of Trump's attempt to create state-controlled media. Barry Weiss, all she cares about is protecting Trump's brand and Israel. That's all she cares about. Avis mentioned the Erica Kirk special. The Erica Kirk special was not only a terrible special, it also bombed. They had to put it on Saturday night at 8 because they couldn't get, any other primetime, audience for it. The sponsors that they expected pulled out, so they got really, low-key sponsors for it as well. But this is what happens when a trusted network starts to change its stripes. And we're seeing right now that it's not only happening with CBS, it's not only happening with news outlets, it's also, Trump is, CNN is becoming, MAGA light. Some would say full MAGA, depending on who the hosts are. But it's also going out into the social media spaces. The Ellisons and these groups are also part of the groups that's buying the U.S. part of TikTok. We also saw it happen, demonstrated with Elon Musk and what he did with Twitter. And they're doing it across. We already have Facebook and Instagram with Zuckerberg. So they're doing this across the board because they want to control information. They want to control what's being put out there. But look, we got a lot of independent media sources now. We got the Black Star Network. We don't have just, 3 TV stations anymore. And we have to continue to support the various networks that are out there and the various people who are out there in this independent space going forward, because they can control all of the platforms in terms of these mainstream medias, but they can't control our eyeballs and they can't control our ability to turn the channel, turn off the channel. And we have to start looking at where we're putting our dollars. Disney has been going, MAGA-esque. I mean, they're making a movie on Gaston, the misogynist from Beauty and the Beast. Like, what the hell's going on as it relates to that? So all of these guys are trying to cater to Trump, but it doesn't mean we have to cater to these media outlets.
That's right. We want you to keep it locked right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, here on the Black Star Network. We want you to know that your support is absolutely critical to what we do here. You can support us via Cash App using the Stripe code. It's on the bottom left hand of the screen right there. You can also help us with credit cards. Use the same thing, PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle at RolandMartin.com. Also, rolling at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you are old school, you can send checks and money orders payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Our goal is to raise $1 million by December 31st. And we truly need your support, everyone. Roland Martin Unfiltered will be right back here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
This is your chance to own a piece of the creator economy. And with Start Engine, investing in Fanbase couldn't be easier. Just visit startengine.com/fanbase and click Get Equity. Opportunities like this don't stay open long, but your investment can help build a platform that pushes the future of social media forward.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Godfrey, the funniest dude on the planet. And you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Well, a federal judge just overturned the murder conviction of Karl Jordan Jr. in the 2002 killing of Run DMC DJ Jam Master Jay. Jason Mizell was gunned down in Queens at a recording studio. He was just 37, shocking hip-hop and stalling justice for more than 2 decades. After a high-profile trial earlier this year convicted Jordan and Ronald Washington, the Judge LaShawn Hall ruled prosecutors' drug-related motive was impermissibly speculative, despite eyewitnesses placing Jordan at the scene, pulling the trigger on his godfather. Washington's conviction holds while a third suspect awaits trial. Jordan stays in jail on drug charges. Now, Mr. Bolden and our panel, tell us what your thoughts are about how this case turned out.
Well, very complicated facts, but I'm not sure I understand the decision. I've been doing this a long time on the criminal defense side. And if you've got a witness and with Jordan pulling the trigger, then motive, whatever the motive is, doesn't seem to be relevant, probative, or material. You've got an eyewitness. Now, if that eyewitness wasn't credible, you got some issues there. This was not just a drug deal gone bad. This was a revenge killing that the two co-defendants hatched because the victim who was involved in selling drugs cut Washington, I think his name, cut Washington out of the deal. And so it wasn't about a drug deal gone bad. This was revenge for being cut out of a drug deal by the victim. And so you have to read the opinion, if there is an opinion from the federal court, because there is a point in time at the end of the trial, whether you, 2 times, when the prosecution is done, you move for dismissal because they haven't proven all the elements of the criminal charges. And then at the end of the case, right, you make the same motion 99% of the time, these motions are not granted by the court because the government has put in enough evidence to support the elements. And then even when the jury comes back with a verdict of guilty, which I believe took place in this case, the defense attorneys will make further arguments to take it out of the jury's hand and ask the judge to look at the evidence independent of the jury decision. And it was at this juncture that the judge believed that there wasn't enough proof of motive as to why Jordan had been there, or even what I don't understand, the disconnect is there's an eyewitness, presumably credible, that had Jordan shooting his godfather as opposed to this whole motive issue. If that witness isn't credible, then the court can move to motive. And if there's no connection, no factual connection to motive, I can see the court rendering its decision. She denied it in regard to the second defendant. And so it's a really confusing decision, disappointing as well. But there's more to come because it has created an appellate issue. And I don't think the government can appeal that dismissal, but it can appeal certain rulings. And so you'd have to get into the case to figure out whether the government can appeal that decision ultimately or not. Normally you can't because the jury renders its verdict. Here, the judge may have overstepped her bounds, and that her decision to overstep her bounds may certainly be appealable by the prosecution.
Dr. Weaver, do you believe the law is doing what it's supposed to do in this case?
You know, I am, if you know, A. Scott Bolden, an attorney, is confused. Lord knows I'm confused. I mean, I do not understand this at all in terms of what happened here, because as far as I read, as was mentioned, there is an eyewitness that claims that they saw this person shoot Jam Master Jay. So I'm confused as to how a judge could just kind of unilaterally, it seems, after a jury has already found this person guilty of that murder, somehow say that that is an incorrect ruling. So I don't really understand. So because I don't really understand, it's hard for me to say that justice was served. I understand that you know, his attorneys have said that now this makes a wonderful thing for him and Christmas. But my concern is with the family of the murder victim here. I know it's my family, someone that I loved, and I sat there and saw all of the testimony come in during the trial, and then to go through all of that, you know, heart-wrenching detail, to then get a guilty verdict now, to find for some strange, obscure reason that it's being pulled back. I would personally be wondering, where is the justice in that? I don't really understand how this got to be the case. And I'm hoping that some clarity can be brought to this, because my thoughts and prayers are really with the family of the person that was killed.
And Dr. Dibinga, do you agree? I mean, about the families, what do you have to say about how they're impacted by this?
Well, definitely. I mean, if Jordan is going to be, you know, released and going home, obviously that's going to be, you know, great for that family. I am wondering what his safety is going to be like as it relates to being up in those streets. But as it relates to the family of Jam Master Jay as well, it's got to be traumatic, especially at this time of year. I mean, whenever you have holiday season and gatherings, that's one of the main times that you're going to be remembering your loved ones who are no longer with you. I mean, it's going to be, you know, our first holiday season without, you know, my mother went home in June. And so that's definitely going to be problematic and traumatic for the family, you know, of Jam Master Jay to get this news. But I got to also say, Brittany, that, you know, I watched the whole Diddy documentary, Diddy the Reckoning, and all of that. And people can have their ideas on whatever they feel about the documentary. But the thing that was really problematic for me was that I realized that if you're like over, I don't know, maybe over 40 or something, you know, came up in hip hop during this time period, we have had so much death, so much violence, so much murder. You know, 2 of the episodes looked at the killings of Biggie and Tupac. And, you know, you have Tupac, and then you have Biggie, and then you have Jam Master Jay, Big L. You can run down the list. And in our communities, Jam Master Jay, in our communities, there's a lot of unresolved trauma, a lot of suppressed trauma from the ways people can take it back before hip hop and go to Marvin Gaye and Sam Cooke. The way that so many of our legends die violently, I think some of us have psychologically just suppressed it in ways that are really problematic for our community. And that's what revisiting this case has me feeling right now, that we have a lot of work to do in our own community as it relates to healing the trauma that comes from so much violence, not just with the stars, but in our community in general. But these stories with the stars has me feeling that as well, especially during the holiday season.
Yeah, if I can make one clarification, Dr. Dominga, Jordan's not going anywhere. He's under a separate federal indictment for drug sale or for selling drugs. And I believe it's a large amount of drugs. And so, you know, the other tragedy is even our entertainers, once, you know, the limelight is gone, you know, I can get into our bad actors, if you will, or be involved in either crime or drugs and what have you. It's very sad, actually, because as I understand from the family that the deceased really was around that, but never involved in that, and in his later years became involved in that. But Jordan's not going anywhere. They didn't say that in the media publications, but he's under separate federal indictment for substantial drug sales.
Thank you.
So what we'll do is we'll keep our eye on this case and we will pay attention to see what happens next. We'll be right back. We are going to talk about mother-daughter relationships on the other side of this break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Well, do you really know just how much young teenage girls are truly carrying? They face challenges such as stress, anxiety, and social pressure, often without knowing how to heal or cope. Licensed professional counselor Robin Wood has dedicated her work to empowering Black girls and women through faith, therapy, and community support. One of her initiatives, Our Girls, provides young women with the tools that they need to thrive. She joins us to talk about the mother-daughter workbook that she put together. Good evening, and thanks for joining us.
I am so excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit more about that workbook.
Listen, I am a mother of 3 daughters. And so when people go to motherdaughterworkbook.com, the first thing you're going to see is I created this for your girls and mine. Let me tell you how this even came about. as a licensed therapist, I sit in the trenches with women, particularly. I work with a lot of women and a lot of couples. And so I was thinking about, as we wrap up the year, what are the things that are just the undercurrent in the work I do with women? And so I started thinking about these three principles that just run beneath the surface of all the work I do. Here is what happened. As I went online on Instagram, which is my favorite social media site, as I went online and I was sharing these three principles, it dawned on me. Have you shared this with your 18-year-old who's a freshman at Howard University? Have you shared this with your 16-year-old who is a junior in high school? And then what about that 11-year-old who is in middle school as we speak? And I realized that while I have shared things with them, I have not walked them through these particular principles, which I believe are key to their emotional resilience and how they interact with others.
Tell us a little bit more about what they've learned.
Okay, so here are the three principles. Now, I want everyone listening to me. First of all, these principles are not just for women, they're not just for girls. However, my heart beats for women and for girls. And so I'm going to share with you the three principles from the framework for young girls to understand. Now, as I share these principles, I want everybody to take a deep breath because these are not easy to hear. They're not easy to accept because the truth is we often want people to validate, sometimes placate what we're feeling. And so these principles are really important for us to see ourselves. So principle number one, in the way that I present it to adults, is this, that just because it happened to you, listen to me, just because it happened to you doesn't mean it's about you. That's how I say it to adults. The way I try to soften it, I say it like this in the workbook for the mothers and daughters, but the way I try to soften it is by saying, I want to help young girls separate their value and their worth from other people's actions. So the young girl gets left out of the group chat. Listen, I know it hurt your feelings. I know it happened to you, but it's not a reflection of your value, of your worth. Because when we believe other people's behavior is a reflection of who I am, I'm going to stay on a roller coaster for the rest of my life. So that's principle number one. Principle number two, I'll give it to you very quickly. Principle number two is helping young girls understand that while there are things that you want somebody to give you an answer to, so you know something happens in your life, and most women understand how we get caught up in this idea of closure. Just need closure. I just need him to tell me why. I just need them to give me an explanation. I just want somebody to give me an answer. But when you get caught up in that tricky need for closure, your healing is going to stay captive to somebody else's decision. And so with young girls, I want them to understand, even if you never get the explanation from that young boy you were talking to and that he just didn't return your call anymore, or from that best friend who decided she didn't want to be friends with you anymore, even if they never give you closure, you can still find healing. And then the last principle, this is the hardest one. This is the one I get so much pushback from. The last principle, I give it to adults like this. Listen, I know you think you're the only one that this is happening to, but you're not the only one. And when you convince yourself that you are, it brings about shame and isolation. So to my adults, I say, I know you think you're the only one, but you're not the only one. To my young people, I tell them, I want you to understand that when you isolate, when you make yourself or you convince yourself that you're the only one dealing with this situation, it causes your shame to increase. So those are the three principles. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. We'll get to the panel in a second, but tell me about some of the success stories from mothers and daughters who have completed the program.
Okay, so let me tell you, I'm so excited because I literally released this workbook just probably 7-10 days ago. And this is how you know when something is really resonating, or this is how I know in particular, because I do so much of this work. But my friends have no problem keeping it real with me when it's something that they agree with or something they don't. And I have so many personal friends who have downloaded the workbook. I have an example of the workbook right here. You just download the workbook. I know you can't see it very well, and you just make a copy of it. You see, I already have it bookmarked here because I am literally taking my own daughters through this. And so the feedback that I have gotten is exactly what I was hoping it would be. This workbook gives mothers the verbiage that they need to have real dialogue with their daughters. This is one of the pieces of feedback. I wish I could show you my text. One of my girlfriends texted me and said, Robin, I love you. And that first principle was great. But we talked about that first principle and then we went on to a totally different conversation. That was exactly what I want. I want to create space for mothers and daughters to be able to have real conversations so that we can begin to heal patterns that have occurred in generations.
Yes, I love that. Let's get to the panel. Dr. Weaver, do you have any questions?
Hi. Well, wonderful work on that. It's so important. Although I'm the mother of sons, throughout my professional career, I've done a lot of research that's looked at Black girls and the challenges that they face navigating a society that is not only anti-Black, but in many ways anti-woman. And if anything, it's getting more so with each passing day. I'm wondering, with your workbook, are you at all delving into the issue of social media and how that may be impacting the self-esteem of Black girls, what they can do to combat that, and how mothers can help them navigate that process so that they don't let what's happening in their ear, so to speak, on all these various different social media platforms, begin the process of them diminishing their own worth before they're even fully blossom into our society.
Yes, I love that question. When you think about it, what I think all of us already know is that we have learned the human brain doesn't even fully get developed until well after 25. So when you think about even us, I remember it was a situation where I was telling my husband, I need you to send me some flowers because I saw somebody on social media get some flowers. And my husband said, remember you told me you don't like flowers? Even I, as a grown woman, have been impacted by social media. So yes, so the beautiful part about the workbook, it is such an easy lift. This is not trying to solve all the problems that mothers or daughters face. But to your very point, there are scenarios that I present. Remember those 3 principles I just gave? Those principles come with a quick scenario. And one of the scenarios is something that happens in social media. I try to use real life situations and I use an example from social media to help them understand you're seeing this over here and you're thinking that these people have a perfect picture, but you don't know what's going on the other side of the camera. And so absolutely, because again, the goal with this is to do just what you heard me do. Y'all saw how I just normalize it, even as a very grown woman who is well over 50, as a grown woman, I too can get impacted by social media. There is so much power when a mother shows vulnerability to let her daughter know I have my areas of growth as well. So hopefully when the mothers go to motherdaughterworkbook.com, they down, y'all, it is such an easy lift. It's such a minuscule investment. It brings about those conversations so mothers can keep it real with their own daughters.
Dr. Debinga.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Your passion really shines through, and which we all appreciate. I wanted to get your thoughts on one of the things I've learned in watching father-son drama, mother-daughter drama, is that I learned that it could be generational, and that the drama that I've experienced with my father could play into drama I might be having with my son. And I feel like a lot of us who are in the throes of it, may not really realize that. Like, what are your thoughts as it relates to that, on the work that adults need to do to put themselves in the position to be able to fully engage their children?
I mean, it almost is like you are reading my mind. That question is so powerful. Let me tell you all what happened, okay? So, and it's so hilarious. If anybody goes to my Instagram, it's Robin May Online, you'll see a video. My husband reading an excerpt from one of my journals from when I was 9 years old, right?
Wow.
So hilarious because my husband's name is Lee. And I actually mentioned Lee in this journal, how Lee is gross. He was some little boy that I don't even remember. So it's so hilarious. Reason why I bring that up is because I found these journals, and these journals are from age 7 to the age 15. And I was reading through these journals a couple of years ago. I keep them now by my nightstand. And I was reading through the journal. I know I'm getting passionate about this, but your question was so perfect because I was reading through the journal. And during that time, one of my daughters was dealing with a particularly sensitive situation. And I was so anxious. I was so nervous about the situation then I read my journal just randomly. I found these journals and I randomly started reading it. And
Mhm.
I was dealing with the exact same thing at the
Wow.
exact same age that that particular daughter was dealing with it. And the relief that came over me, why relief? Because I got through it. So now I can give her hope that she can get through it. So the other aspect to your point, when I'm working with women, and I talked about this a lot during a live recently, when I'm working with women, women show up on my couch, and most often they're not coming because they're having challenges with parenting, but that ends up coming up. And what blows women's minds is that often what I experience is exactly what happens when we don't slow our lives down. I want y'all to hear this. This is a little free clinical 101. When we don't slow our lives down and pay attention to what we do and why we do it, we will repeat the pattern. We're repeating the pattern not intentionally. We're repeating the pattern because it's flowing underneath the fabric of who we are. And so, yes, that is why we look up and we find ourselves doing the same things, experiencing the same things that happen with our parents. That's how we repeat things. Find myself saying, that ain't your room, that's my room. Until you start paying a mortgage, that ain't nothing but what mama and them used to say. And so absolutely, that's what happens when you don't slow down. You will repeat the good stuff, but you'll also repeat the stuff that's not so great.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, Doc, love what you're doing. I'm a product of strong, proud, intelligent, beautiful Black women, whether it's my mother. I have 3 daughters and a granddaughter. One set of twins make up of the 3 daughters and granddaughter, and very active in their lives. I find myself very oftentimes managing their mothers and managing their mothers' relationships with my 3 daughters and granddaughter. But more importantly, with the twins being so close to me in Washington, they're often at my home. They're 30 years old. I managed that twin relationship, and I'm managing their relationships with significant others. Often I've had to learn how to talk to them because I'm a lawyer and was raised by a judge, and I've learned that communicating, I can't litigate them. I shouldn't litigate anybody, but I certainly can't litigate them when I'm trying to show strength and resolve it, because I'm tired of dealing with it, quite frankly. I looked through your workbook. There were some concepts and precepts, and those 3 concepts that you talked about, I thought as a father, I could be helpful in working with my daughters, even at their age of 30 and 40 years old, including my 40-year-old who came into my life when she was 19. I did not know I had a daughter. And so just a lot of moving parts. But as a father, I could use some of those concepts and precepts even now. And so I think your book is wonderful. But can you talk about the father-daughter dynamic and how I use your workbook, or can I use your workbook to manage those relationships or to make them more loving and powerful?
You know, I just want to give you a high five for even asking the question, because absolutely, I, of course, have a passion about mothers and daughters, but I have a husband who does not play about these 3 girls we're raising. And what I love about my husband, while he isn't a lawyer, he was a politician for a long, long time. And now we pastor a church together. And so he too can have a tendency to want to get right to the point. But what I love about him is that he's coachable, that he is open to my feedback as a
Yep.
woman as he is
Yep.
navigating with our daughters. And so what I want to say to husbands, what I want to say to fathers, what I want to say to uncles, number one, yes, you go ahead and you just sneak peek. You get a sneak peek. You go ahead and invest in the workbook so that you can understand the principles. But even more powerful than that, gift it to a woman in your life that you trust to pour into your young girls or your teenage girls. I have one of my really good friends. She is not a biological mother, but she is a godmother. She has purchased the workbook because
Yeah.
she wants to help pour into them. So if you are a father Number one, you can learn so much from this. You know, one of the things I love doing is when I work with men, because I talk a lot about my work with women and my work with couples, but I have a few courageous men who show up on my virtual couch. And I love creating a space for them to be heard so that they can so I can understand what's going on with them. Well, that's what I want to offer to husbands and to fathers. Go ahead and invest so that you too can get a sneak peek in what's happening in the heart of a young girl. Listen, when we first opened this conversation, we talked about the fact that as the longer we go on and the crazier the world gets, young girls are getting marginalized more and more. But young girls are some of the most powerful game shifting, culture shifting people that we have. And this is an opportunity to mold them, not in the way we want them to be, but mold them in the way they were created. Now, you guys have a first lady on here, so just let me say this scripture very quickly. The Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. But what I love about that, when you really study that scripture, it means train up a child in the way they are naturally bent, the way they were naturally created. And so this workbook does just that. It helps girls understand these mental health or these emotionally sensitive topics. I'll say this because y'all know I can talk about this all day. I'll say this very quickly. As a mother, I care deeply about my daughter's academics, right? Like I said, I have a freshman at Howard who happens to be Miss Freshman. I just have to throw that out there.
All right now.
At Howard University. A daughter who very quickly start talking about college with her. And so I care about academics and I care about their athletics. My daughter, who is a junior, she's bad on the volleyball court. My baby is the regional champion for gymnastics. So I care about athletics. But what I care about the most, what I see the most with the people I work with people who are the top of their field. If you have not built your emotional intelligence, if your emotional intelligence hasn't been strengthened, if you don't know how to interact with other people, if you don't know how to have healthy relationships, if you don't know your self-worth and you get connected to somebody who jacks up your life because you didn't have boundaries, those things will count much deeper than what we realize and than what is taught in school. That is the heartbeat behind the mother-daughter workbook.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Robin, tell us exactly where we can find this mother-daughter workbook.
Y'all, don't walk, don't crawl. You need to run to motherdaughterworkbook.com, motherdaughterworkbook.com. There are two aspects of it. You can just get the workbook by itself. That alone is a game changer. You just get it, print it out, go through it yourself, or you can invest in the companion guide when you get the mother-daughter workbook plus a companion guide where I walk you through the eye rolls you might get, the pushback you might get, the disconnect where she may not understand the principle. I walk you through that. So just go to motherdaughterworkbook.com. I think it's a game changer for families.
It is a game changer. And we appreciate you for sharing the work that you've been doing to help mother and daughters and families throughout our country. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I also want to thank our panelists for joining us tonight. We had Dr. Dabinga, Dr. DeWeaver, and Mr. Bolden. It's been a great show, and we want to thank you for joining us here on Roland Martin Unfiltered tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm a doctor too, by the way. I have a Juris Doctorate. You know, these academics, they think they're better than lawyers, but I just want to add that. I just want to add that, you know.
Glad you added it.
I plead the fifth.
And respect you too, mister. And we look forward to having you again on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Thank you so much for watching the show tonight. That's all for today, but hopefully you'll join us tomorrow on Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Have a wonderful evening.